Hello, hello. I'm your host, Ari Mazobi, and welcome to Notes from Somewhere. This is a podcast about the people and places that shape us and the versions of ourselves we meet along the way. In each episode, I'll be going into a note from somewhere, a city, a country, or a season of life, and the stories beneath the surface. In the last episode, I shared a little bit about my story growing up between Hawaii, Singapore, and Hong Kong. And today we're going to be continuing that theme of travel, identity, and culture, but through a different lens. Today's guest is Kristina Rodulfo, a Filipina American beauty writer, editor, consultant, and creator based in New York. Formerly the beauty director at Women's Health and senior beauty editor at Elle, she is an expert in product testing, trend forecasting, and advocating for more inclusive beauty standards for women of color. Over the years, she's built an incredible career telling stories in the beauty and media world while also navigating what it means to grow up in between cultures. So in this conversation, we talk about her experience growing up Filipina American in New York, how her cultural identity shaped her, and how she's learned to navigate spaces that don't always reflect where you come from. Kristina, I'm so excited to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for such a generous introduction. That was so nice.
I hope I got everything in there. It was really hard, I'm not going to lie, to narrow it down. I went through a couple iterations of that, so I hope I did it justice, but
You did a great job. I feel like sometimes even I have a difficult, I'm trying to introduce myself to somebody new because there's so much that I do, so much experience that I have, and I never know how to narrow it down into just like one line.
Yeah. And I was like, can I get this in 3 lines? Let's try. I wanted to start with your somewhere. So my podcast is Notes from Somewhere, and it's all about the people and places that shape us. So again, I couldn't think of anyone better to have on the show than you. What is your somewhere? And like when you think about when your story began, what comes to mind for you?
Well, I would say that my story starts in New York City. I'm born and raised here. I grew up in Queens, Jamaica, Queens specifically, and my mom immigrated here in the late 80s when there was a nursing shortage in the US. So she was part of a big wave of Filipino immigration into the States where people were healthcare workers, mostly nurses who came. And so she came here while my dad and my older brothers were still in the Philippines to kind of establish roots here and, try to create better opportunity for her family. So she moved here ahead of my brother and my dad. Eventually they came over, and then eventually I was born and my younger sister was born. So we were a big family, a full house that was chaotic and full of love. But I think growing up in New York City in particular really shaped me because, one, I was surrounded by so many different cultures. I feel like every other block had a different cuisine. You could travel even just within Queens. I feel like there's little subcultures of different ethnic groups. And my block specifically, because I was 3 blocks away from a Catholic church, and the Philippines is very Catholic, I was surrounded by Filipino people.
Wow.
So it was really a blessing to have that because I meet a lot of Filipino American people who don't grow up with that kind of community. And I grew up in such a strong community that was full of Filipino people. So I was able to learn a lot about the culture and feel really integrated into it, even though I wasn't born in the Philippines. So I was grateful for that. And then also the fact that New York City is like the cultural center, or one of the cultural centers of the world, where you had access to everything from museums to, live music and everything. Like, I feel like I watched my first Broadway show when I was 5 years old.
Wow.
It was Beauty and the Beast. I think as a creative person, being surrounded by the richness that the city has to offer in terms of art and just experiences and people of all different backgrounds, I think that really shaped my perspective. And it made me realize I want to have a career that's creative because it's possible. Yeah.
Absolutely. And that's so cool because I think, to your point, that a lot of people grow up in the places that they are in, but not necessarily have that connection back to their heritage. And I think it's rare to find the perfect blend of both. And it sounds like you had that growing up. And I think that's such a New York experience.
It is very New York. And I think that I didn't really appreciate it as much at the time because it's the only thing that I knew. I thought everyone grew up the same as me, like every other kid, right? But once I went to college in NYU, and I was meeting a lot of other Filipino people there too, because there was a Filipino club. So I was very involved in it. Getting to meet people who grew up in other parts of the country and learning about what their experiences were like growing up, where a lot of times, they were the only Filipino person in the suburb that they grew up in, or they didn't grow up connected to Filipino culture. It really made me look back and appreciate the fact that I learned the traditional dances, the food that my ancestors,
Yeah.
had created, and that I grew up even on the pop culture as well. Like
Yeah.
I watched Filipino soap operas, and I watched the
Wow.
Filipino singers and movies, and I just feel like growing up really proud of my culture was something that I think is very grounding for me, especially now as somebody who works in media and see how homogenous it can be. Like it's no secret that like working in media means that you might be the only person of color in a room, and that there's like a serious lack of diversity in many newsrooms where I ended up. But I think having that, foundation of my culture and heritage and being proud of
Mm.
that really rooted me.
Yeah, and I want to talk about your career in just a minute, but one thing that I was curious about is when you were growing up, it sounds like you had a lot of moments of being proud. Were there ever any moments where you had to pause and, was there any like ever tension or anything that made you think growing up, like, this is actually hard to try to balance the two cultures? Because so far it sounds like you've had a really great mixture. And as someone who also straddled multiple backgrounds myself, I can only imagine that there were, just like you had the highs, there were probably moments when you had lows. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Sure. I think that especially when I was younger, and the first time I remember really going back to the Philippines, I think I was 14 years old. And when I went there, it made me realize just how much I was missing in terms of cultural experience and really
Mm.
understanding the Philippines. I was so young, of course. So again, no fault of mine at all. And I was
No.
very curious about learning more about my culture. I always have been, but I think I felt incredibly American when I was over there, just in the way that I talk, the fact that I was always very embarrassed by the fact that I don't speak the native language there,
Yeah.
Tagalog, or my parents' dialect is called Bicol, and I could understand both. Like my ears are fluent. I always say that,
Yeah.
but I can't speak it because it wasn't really spoken in our household. We just spoke English. So I think I had I had a little bit of embarrassment about how American I was,
Mhm. Mhm.
considering that both my brothers, grew up in the Philippines. My parents were from the Philippines, and I just felt like I was this American girl, completely like a fish out of water. So I think I had a bit of embarrassment about that. And almost a little bit of shame as well
Mhm.
that I didn't speak the language, that I felt so disconnected, that I grew up somewhere that was like so far away from the homeland, and that I didn't really have a grasp of what it really meant to be a Filipino in the Philippines. Like, I think that that was like such an eye opener for me. But
Yeah.
if anything, that trip when I was 14, going back to my parents' hometowns, like
Mhm.
really, really getting into the rural areas of the Philippines, like the waterfall where my dad used to drink and hang out with his buddies, like
No
seeing those
way.
things, I think gave me a lot of perspective, not only on my culture, but also my place in the world in a way where
Mm.
it's like I felt a lot of gratitude to my parents for the sacrifice that they made
Mhm.
in order to let me have the life that I have in New York City. It's like night and day. My mom grew up in this province called Kamalig, which is really tiny. It's at the foot of a mountain, or actually a volcano. It's an active
Wow.
volcano. It's
That
called
sounds beautiful.
it's beautiful. It's one of the most stunning places in the world, but it's a volcano called the Mayon volcano, famous in the Philippines because it's the shape of a perfect cone. It's very iconic, but my mom grew up around the foot of that volcano. And when I think about the fact that she tells me stories of how, just like how she grew up, like they'd have to get evacuated because the volcano was erupting, and then, like emergency services would come and they would drop off like FEMA, like, you know what I mean? Like they
Oh
would
my
drop off
god.
like supplies for the people and they'd all have to stay in the school and things like that, where it feels like completely different from
Yeah.
the reality that I grew up in America, where everything, especially in New York City, is like so convenient. Like you could
Mm.
walk around the corner to the bodega and pick up, I don't know, a bag of chips. Like that was not really like something that I ever thought about until I went back home.
Yeah, and
Hmm.
I'm sure that having that perspective of where your parents started their story and almost like that direct contrast to how you started your story, I can
Hmm.
only imagine that it's probably a very overwhelming feeling to
Hmm.
feel that gap, but at the same time, to your point, it's always so humbling and you feel just so grateful to be able to see that your parents were able to start something fresh here so that you can have your reality
Yeah.
here. So I know Christina from having worked with her on a lot of beauty campaigns. And Christina's one of my favorite beauty creators who I've ever worked with.
Thank you.
No, truly. And I think part of why we've bonded is because you've always been so open and humble. I mean, you've accomplished so much in your career, but you've been incredibly humble about how you got to where you are. But I don't think that everyone who's listening knows your story. So I'd love to dig a little bit more into that because, I think we've talked a little bit about who you were when you were growing up. And I truly think that from what you've told me and what I know about you, that has set you up for your career. Talk me through like how you started in media and why you decided to go into beauty media specifically. And as you were going through that, what were the elements of your upbringing or your culture that you started to kind of discover, perhaps even for the first time through that experience of beginning your career here in New York?
Sure. So, like I mentioned, I'm from New York City. So I think that being in New York, you're just like, you're surrounded by media constantly, magazines. And I made sure to subscribe to all the magazines. I was obsessed, especially with the teen magazines.
Yeah.
So like Cosmo Girl, Teen
Love.
Vogue, 17, like they were my life.
Yeah. I mean, which girl like wasn't reading that growing up, right?
Exactly. And even the magazines like J14 or Tiger Beat, I feel like I loved those magazines as well. And they were such like a precious form of media at the time that I really grew up with like such an appreciation for them, but I didn't really know that it could be a career. So when I was 14, again, I guess 14 was a very formative year for me.
Sounds like
When I was 14, I was in a math class, and I don't know why my math teacher had us do an assignment that had to do with careers, but I guess that's the kind of high school that I went to. So it was my freshman year of high school. And she said, I want you guys to interview somebody who has a career that you're interested in. And then we're going to present it. Again, I don't know what this has to do with math, but anyway, I appreciate the assignment because it was the very first time that I learned what a journalist is. Because I asked my mom, like, do you know anyone who has a career in writing? Because I knew from a very, very young age that I wanted to be a writer. I was a voracious reader as a kid. So distant niece of hers was a journalist. And so I interviewed her about it. And then from there, I was kind of enamored with the idea of wanting to become a journalist. Of course, we watch all those movies like 13 Going on 30 or How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. Like, I feel like pop culture shaped this generation of magazine editors. They said, this is the most fabulous job that you can have and you are going to do it. And so I really was delusional in a way where I really believed somebody with zero connections, is going to get somehow in this industry. But I was very, focused, and I started in high school, really. Like, I was writing for the school newspaper. I took journalism class. I did a summer program at Barnard College for writing. And during that program, I ended up going on a field trip to Nylon Magazine. And Nylon Magazine, we met some of those editors, and I looked in the offices and I thought to myself, this is what I want to do. So every single semester and every single summer, I was interning at a publication. So my very first job was actually at a website called stylebistro.com. And I was a fashion... well, they still exist, actually. So, but they were brand new, and I was a fashion closet intern. I did no writing at all, but I think what that taught me was how the industry works. It taught me how the industry works because when you're at the very bottom of the food chain in the magazine world, you get to see how the entire thing operates. So I was a person who was literally just trafficking samples across the city. My MetroCard and I were best friends. I was going uptown, downtown, west side, east side, like, carrying bags and bags of clothing just for these photo shoots and organizing them, cataloging them. And so that's kind of how I learned how the PR world works, because they're the ones who have the samples, and then they're the ones who you have to return them to and have to request from. So getting to see how the editorial team worked behind the scenes kind of was like my starting ground. Actually, within that team, I was able to go up and be on the editorial team. So I was able to become an intern and then write for the website. And because it was a website and they were new, they were so experimental. They're like, whatever ideas you have, like, we're gonna publish them, which is great because the hardest thing is to get your bylines out there. And so just the more that you were able to write, the better. And so from there, I was able to meet some editors who would eventually take me on to their other jobs as well. So I got an internship at Time Out New York, at Harper's Bazaar, at Elle.com, and this website that's now defunct called realbeauty.com.
Oh,
and
yeah.
So,
remember that?
Do you really remember that? Oh, my gosh. So Real Beauty was a website that was owned by Hearst.
Yes.
So I worked in the Hearst building at the time. And Hearst is a company that owns a lot of very famous magazines like Elle, Esquire. I feel like they, like Hearst and Condé Nast have like probably the most famous magazines in the world. And so the fact that I was in the Hearst building and working on this website, I was thinking to myself, okay, I'm one step closer to getting to my dream magazine. And my dream magazine at the time was Elle. And I knew that they were like, just a few floors away. And it really, like, in my head, I was thinking to myself, like, I'm going to get there. I'm going to become a magazine editor and I'm going to work at Elle.
You knew what you wanted.
I knew what I wanted from a very, very young age. I was like very focused. And among my friends, they knew me to be very ambitious as well because I didn't take any summers. Like, I worked every single summer, and this is the time of unpaid internships.
Where
I was literally,
I remember that too.
I was doing this for free, and the only reason that I could do it is because I lived in New York City, and so I was living at home with my parents, and I was able to commute. If I didn't live here and I'd have to find housing, like, there's no way that I would have been able to do that. So I really hustled hard. I pitched ideas. I was bold, and I tried to be memorable at every job that I was at. And eventually, after interning, I ended up at Elle and Elle.com as an intern, and I was able to write there. And from there, I started just like working my way through the magazine world. So I worked at a website. Oh my God, wait, actually, I was wrong. The first website that I worked at was called Stylecaster, not Style Bistros.
Well, I do remember Stylecaster too, because I started in PR around probably the same time you were starting your career. And I had to pitch all of those outlets that you've just talked about. I have to say something really funny because I used to pitch Kristina when I was in PR. So I actually knew of you tangentially before we started to really work together when you kind of pivoted into more content creation. Anyways, so you were at Stylecaster.
Yeah, so Stylecaster was my very first internship. How could I forget that? You see, this is how I know I'm getting old because all the details are getting like muddy.
No,
I don't even remember anymore.
I'm impressed you even remembered what you just talked through because I couldn't do the same. The 2010s are all one mushed history in my mind.
1000%. Yeah. I just spent a lot of time on the subway. I remember that much, just like kind of running all over the city, with my dreams in my pockets. So that was the first website. And so I did a little bit of everything there, but it wasn't until I ended up working at Elle.com on staff as an associate editor that I decided I wanted to work in beauty because I think that I was starting to get more beauty assignments. And, I worked a little bit in fashion. I worked a little bit and did entertainment and culture reporting. I did celebrity news reporting. I kind of did everything, which I feel like when you're starting out your career, you really should try to do everything because it's important to figure out what you don't like and what you like. But when I did beauty stories, there was something that clicked inside me where I was just like, oh my gosh, I love this. And I feel so natural at it. And when I think about my life, I feel like beauty is a huge thing in the Filipino community. Like beauty pageants are a massive point of interest within our community. There's so many Miss Universes who were Miss Philippines. And I think that, and I feel like within the country, like there's just an inherent, at least the women that I've met and that I've known, there's such an inherent interest in beauty. We like our lipsticks, we like our foundations, we like being put together. And all my aunties are women who will always look really put together, have the eyeliner on, have the lipstick on. And even my mom, like she's pretty minimalist with her makeup, but she will always have powder on her and always have, just a little something before she goes outside. So I feel like Filipino women love beauty and I also love beauty. So I feel like as the person who always was kind of first to adopt beauty things. Like I was wearing eyeliner when I was 12. I was using these lip smackers, lip glosses when I was
a throwback.
When I was like a Catholic school student and you're not allowed to wear makeup. So I feel like I always loved beauty. And when I finally started writing more about it, something really lit up in me where I felt like, oh, this is an industry that I want to work in. And the more that I learned about it, the more that I was like, that idea was confirmed.
I love that you mentioned the journey you've been through. And I have to say that while I don't come from a Filipino background, my mom is from Hong Kong. And there must be something in common between those cultures because my mom would go to the grocery store with a full face of makeup. And I'm like, my dad would be like, who are you planning on seeing? And she's like, no, I'm just trying to look put together. And I don't know how to explain that because my fiance's family is like the complete opposite. They're so comfortable leaving the house, no makeup whatsoever, not even powder, not even mascara or like a brow. I'm just like, I kind of wish I could do that because it sounds so freeing. But at the same time, like I can hear my mother's voice being like, what are you doing? You gotta look put together. And I feel like it's so ingrained and it sounds like both of our minds to, always try to like look polished and beauty beauty is like a fun way to discover how to do that. So it's not a chore. It's more like a form of art. And I see it as like a way to kind of almost have a moment to yourself. It's like self-care for me in the morning or whenever I'm getting ready to feel like I've got those 15 minutes where I'm just kind of beautifying myself. And it's really like almost like therapeutic in a way that I can't quite get my fiance to understand. That's okay. But I would love to know, as you were going through the beauty editor world, was there a moment where you thought, oh, okay, like now that I've been able to write and discover all these beauty products, like I want to share that with more than just written communication. I want to find a way to do that visually through content. I love that you've straddled both writing and content creation very seamlessly in a way that not a lot of people can do. A lot of people talk about it, but I think you've really embodied it fully and found a lot of success through it. So, yeah, can you just talk me through like was that different? Between writing and content creation, was it difficult to make that transition? Did you discover anything else new about what you want to do through that journey?
So for me, I think that I kind of fell into content creation, if I'm being
Yeah,
completely honest. I know that there
that's
are a lot
amazing,
of
though.
people out there who, that's the goal. The goal is to
Yeah.
become like a full-time content creator. For me, my goal was always to become a magazine editor. And so when it finally happened, and I also reached the highest title that you can, like within
Mm-hmm.
beauty, which is to be like a beauty director,
Yep.
and I was a beauty director at Women's Health, I thought to myself, okay, where do I go from here? Do I want to continue working in editorial in magazines, or do I want to work at a beauty brand and go in-house and maybe do communications or
Mm.
marketing? Like I felt like I was searching for the next role or the next step, and I didn't really know what it looked like. In the meantime, while I was a beauty editor, Instagram was completely exploding. I feel like Instagram influencers were starting to become really influential in the
Mhm.
space. I said influencers were being influential, which is so funny.
I
But
mean, they are.
they were having an impact within the industry, like within the fashion industry. They were getting invited to fashion shows. They were
Mhm.
starting trends. And, it used to be magazines were the ones that were really creating culture and curating it and kind of telling the general population, like, this is what's trending, this is what's exciting. And eventually I noticed a shift where it became more about reporting on what's happening on social media. So I would be writing stories about, oh, this is going viral, and then this
Mm.
is the story. So I felt like there was definitely a very clear shift that happened as influencers started to gain prominence and more social platforms started to launch, like TikTok, for example. That
Yeah.
was like an explosive thing that happened. Right place, right time, especially in the middle of the pandemic, right? When everyone was just scrolling on their phones and
Yeah,
stuck at home.
totally.
So I think for me, I always loved sharing on social media. So even in the Facebook days when it was literally just my 5 friends, I would be posting, 60 photo albums of hanging out at the mall. I've always been someone who loves to document life, document memories. I just didn't realize that that was something that could actually become a job. So when I was a beauty editor, because I would get access to these incredible experiences, whether it was going to events or traveling the world with beauty brands or getting to try a launch like months before it even hits the shelves at Sephora,
Oh, yeah.
I felt like this is too cool not to share. In addition to maybe writing about it, I would always share it on my own personal social media. So I was already creating content in a way that everybody was creating content, where Instagram originally was just kind of updating your friends, right?
Yeah.
So I think that that's how I was using it. But I was also making sure to, like, when I post a picture of lipstick, that it's a pretty picture of lipstick. So I think I was always conscious of the fact that, oh, this should be curated to some degree, or this should be thoughtful. And around 2021, I think I was still at Women's Health. I was the beauty director, and I was starting to feel a bit burned out. I was starting to
Mhm.
feel like, we were all working from home for over a year at that point. I was really looking for my next step.
Yeah.
I was still creating content. I was new to TikTok like everybody. I was creating little videos. I was starting to get a little bit of a following. And I think when I started seeing traction on TikTok, I started to think to myself, oh, wow, like maybe I could actually try this out and let me see what I can do. So it didn't really come from a place of wanting to be a full-time content creator. It was more like, this can be a lane, but let me see what else I can do. So before I quit my job, I actually spent 6 months creating a plan, like a runway, an exit strategy.
I don't think I knew this.
I decided to myself, I'm going to quit my job in, 5 to 6 months. And I created a very detailed plan of a week by week, there's action items on every single week. And it was everything from, create my domain, edit my website, open a business bank account, find an accountant, like all of these logistic things about starting a business, in addition to also connecting within my network. And so I did a ton of informational interviews where it was everything from my friends who are freelance writers and making a living off of that to people who are copywriters, people who are running agencies or working in the brand side or on influencer marketing. So I kind of just was trying to gather as much information as I could about the kind of work that I could do freelance. And so my original intention was actually to become a freelance writer and write for publications, and that would be my main gig. But a week after quitting my job, I got my first ever brand partnership, and it was with Glow Recipe. And from then, it was kind of just like a flood of opportunities that started coming my way. And of course, eventually Sephora Squad, which of course like solidified me as a content creator, I think so. And I felt like I was on a speeding train and a little bit. Like I was like, oh, wow, like I can be a content creator and this is a real, actual, sustainable, living that I can make off of it. So that's kind of how I started.
Well, that makes sense to me because I think you've always been an expert in storytelling. And I feel like people forget that content creation is not just about having a pretty face, a pretty product, or, aesthetically pleasing content. It's more it's that, but also a combination of the aesthetics working in a way that feels aspirational or entertaining to the audience, while at the same time having that meaningful story that you're able to share with the audience. And it sounds like you've found a way to translate your storytelling from the written form to also the visual form. And I just love that because I didn't realize you weren't planning on it at all.
No,
That's
no, I wasn't.
amazing.
Well, the thing is, like, I thought I wanted to believe that I could do it, but I didn't have, and I still don't have, a huge following. So in my head, I was thinking you could only become a successful content creator if you have 1 million followers. I think that that's kind of a common understanding, or misunderstanding, I should say, because I didn't realize just how viable of a business you could have without having such a huge following. And I think a lot of that was really more like brand positioning. So it was a lot of trial and error. Like, don't get me wrong. I feel like those first 6 months of me trying to be a content creator, I was really throwing stuff at a wall and kind of just figuring things out as I go. And it's very vulnerable because you have people watching, it's like, it's inherently very public. So I think that I kind of just had to get over myself and just like keep on trying, even if it's difficult, even if it was, I felt a lot of self-doubt sometimes just because, again, it's the wild, wild west. I still feel that way. There's not really any standardization across the influencer marketing space, and nobody shares information. So I feel like it's very much you're just guessing a lot and then figuring things out along the way. So I really juggled a lot that first year of being a content creator because I was on retainer with a PR agency and I was helping write, press releases, but then I was also consulting with like an indie beauty brand and doing everything from like social posts to helping name a product. And I was also getting assignments to write for copywriting projects, and it was juggling a lot because I was really trying to find my way. But once I really focused and like I feel like I had to believe in myself that I really could be a content creator, that things started really falling into place.
Wow. Well, and I think you've shared with me here and there a little bit about this, but I think it would be amazing for all the listeners and viewers to hear now after trying everything. And, I'm sure you get this question all the time. I see it in your stories because I watch all of Kristina's content. I would love to know, who do you think is really moving the needle when it comes to beauty right now? And specifically would also love to know any Filipina beauty brands that you're loving or anything that's popping up for you as truly innovative right now, because everybody, has tried most of the big name brands. But yeah, if there's anyone that you have discovered recently, I think that would be really fun to talk about.
Well, I went to the Philippines last May because I had a friend's wedding that I was a part of. And so that was a really incredible trip because I was there for almost a month, actually. And while I was there, I connected with my friend, Belle Rodulfo, who I'm not related to, but she's also a beauty editor, but based in the Philippines. And she and I went shopping at a department store where she told me every top beauty brand from the Philippines that I should know. So I got the inside scoop. And I actually wrote about this on my Substack where I had like a comprehensive list. But some products and brands that I remember from there. One is called Happy Skin. They do makeup and skincare. They're great. Sunny's Face is really popular and also available in the US. I actually covered the launch of their US website for Elle.com, and that's really exciting. They're known for like really pigmented, beautiful lipsticks, although they have a ton of other products that are also incredible. There's also this brand called Detail Cosmetics. They have this incredible lip liner that literally never goes away. Like you have to like really rub it off. Like it's like it stays all day, which is what you want from a lip liner. So Detail Cosmetics is really great. Issy Cosmetics, they have Colorette. Oh my gosh, there's so many local brands in the Philippines that are doing incredible things. And especially as somebody who has more melanin in her skin, who's like tan morena is what we would say in the Philippines, I think that sometimes it's difficult to find brands that really cater to my skin tone, especially when it comes to bronzer. Like a lot of, US based brands, their bronzer will literally be just the color of my skin.
Or it's like overly brown.
Orange.
Like, what? Orange?
Yes.
Yep. Or like some terrible shade of copper.
Exactly. So as far as it comes to, brands moving the needle, it's hard to say because I feel like I have such a big vantage point. I really see everything that's going on. And because I love the beauty industry, I really like read up a lot in it. I research a lot. I try everything. I must get thousands of pitches a week of just like products that are launching, and it's almost impossible to keep up. But some that stand out to me, I would say Do Skin is incredible. So they are a brand that is in Sephora. And their founders or their co-founders are Joyce DeLemos, who's also Filipino, by the way. She's a cosmetic chemist.
Love that.
And Charlotte Palomino, who is also a content creator. And a lot of her content is about like science and skincare and like debunking, a lot of the misinformation that's out there about skincare, which I really appreciate. And so what I think they do really smartly is really leaning into the science of skincare, and really demystifying it and helping the consumer understand it, like ingredients, how things work, how things are priced. Like I really appreciate their transparency, but also the products are just really good. Like I feel like they work so well for my skin, and I have really acne prone skin. I think that they're so smart in the way that they're running the business, and just I really admire what they're creating. So I love them. Tower 28 is incredible, like founded by Amy Liu.
Try them. You've told me many times that they're amazing.
Tower 28. So they are specialized in sensitive skin, and sensitive skin can mean a lot of different things, right? It could mean eczema or psoriasis, or it could also mean acne prone. And again, as I'm someone who's acne prone, a lot of their skincare and makeup, I know I can trust. But also what I really love is that their founder, Amy, she is really intentional about helping uplift the API community within beauty. Like I feel like she always shows up and she always like has initiatives that like uplift the API community, and that's something that I really admire from a founder. I think that is something that I wish I could see from more brands, in terms of really just like bringing the community together. I think that that's great. I think that Topicals is another skincare brand. Like they're doing really amazing stuff right now where it's like they just like know how to tap into pop culture. They just know, or not just pop culture, but just culture in general. Like they just have like the special sauce when it comes to being cool, and being cool is like what every brand wants to be, but very few brands actually are cool. So
effortlessly cool, I feel like, without actually having to force it. Yeah.
But what they do so smart is that they take very, I would say, like unsexy problems and then make them feel like they destigmatize it. So like I think that whether it's like hyperpigmentation or ingrown hairs, like they take those issues, create solutions, and then make you feel like you want to be a part of it, like be a part of their club. Like I want to use their products because they seem so cool and fun. Again, they just like have their finger on the pulse of everything.
Wow.
Those are 3 brands that I think are doing amazing things, but I could go on.
The passion and the level of just expertise that you have, Kristina, in the beauty space always never ceases to amaze me. I do want to chat really quickly because before we hopped on, we were catching up a bit about how you have spent a lot of time traveling with your now husband. Yeah. And I feel like that's actually something that bonded us too. Like we both have husbands, or not husbands.
Husband to be
for me. But we both have partners who are from other cultures, and we're already navigating our nuanced cultural backgrounds, and then you add in the fact that we have partners from other places. I think that actually, maybe I'm biased, but I think that makes us very unique people in the sense that we know how to navigate all of that together. And I would just love to hear, did dating Michael, your husband, unlock anything new for you in terms of how you identify and how you understand your Filipino background?
That's so interesting because I come to the table and I'm very Filipino. Like I feel like I'll meet you and then it will be one of the first things that I tell you within 5 minutes. Like I'm Filipino, by the way. Like I'm so proud, and it defines me in such a way that I I love, you know? So I would say that when I first met Michael, one, it's not like I was seeking an Australian man. Like that wasn't
To clarify.
but I think what drew me, drew us together was the fact that we both love to travel. So I think that, you know, on that first date, the first thing that we were talking about was all of our travels and just all the ways that we relate because we love to explore the world and we love to chase and really live life to its fullest by experiencing everything that the world has to offer. So whether it's, you know, it's in Paris or just like, you know, like hiking in Switzerland, like I feel like the two of us, we just want to experience everything. And so I think that that's what bonded us originally. I would say that getting to be in a relationship with someone who's Australian, you know, he moved here in 2018 and that's the year that we met. So he actually didn't have a lot of time to be, you know, a bachelor in New York. But I think that that was like, what's amazing is that us being together, you know, that long has made me understand and feel almost like a proud ownership of Australian culture as well, because I learned so much from him. And I've also spent a lot of time in Sydney where he's from. So, you know, we would spend, because I have a flexible schedule and job, like I've had the privilege of being able to spend, you know, 1 month, 2 months, or like, you know, almost 3 months in Sydney and really getting to immerse in the culture there. And I feel like it has definitely changed me, and being with Michael has changed me for the better, because it is true what they say, Australians are very laid back, very relaxed.
Kristina and I are not usually.
And I am not a relaxed person at all. I am like the most type A person that you could ever imagine. And, you know, I'm very much a perfectionist. And I've always been that way since I was a kid. And again, as a born and raised New Yorker, I feel like I'm like a hustle and grind kind of person. I was very much, you know, all about climbing the ladder and doing everything that I can and optimizing all the time. And I think that spending time in Australia and being married to an Australian has brought me down several notches in that respect. And I think it was what I needed. We complement each other so well because he has this attitude of like, everything will work out, you know? And I think that that is something that I needed in my life, because it's true. Like not everything has to be so serious. And I think the sense of humor that Australians have, that's just like inherent. Like they're always cracking jokes. They're always very self-deprecating. That was so refreshing to me because everything always felt so serious to me all the time. And then in the other direction, like him immersing with my family and my culture has also opened him up in a way, I believe, where Filipinos are very big with our emotions. We do not deflect, or we're not self-deprecating. We're very earnest people. And we, you know, we do love to karaoke. We love the ballads. Like we love movies. Like,
the drama.
You know, we love the drama. Like I think that him embracing Filipinos and Filipino culture has also helped open him up a little bit to more vulnerability, I think so, which I feel like everybody needs. Everyone needs a little bit of vulnerability.
Totally. No, that's beautiful, because it sounds like you've brought out the best parts of each other's cultures and learn how to, no pun intended, marry those two together in a very seamless way. And people always ask me and David, my fiance, because they're like, how do you travel so well together? I think you and Michael are definitely some of those couples who I look at and think they probably travel very well together. Like, but do you have your differences when you travel? Like are your styles the same?
That's so funny, because before we started recording, I was just telling Harry about how we spent in 2022, which is the year before we got married. We spent most of that year traveling. We were 2 months in Australia and then 3 months in Europe, just going everywhere from France, Italy, Spain, Portugal. Like we were all over the place. So I feel like we have a lot of experience traveling together. And I would say that one thing that is great about us is that we have very similar travel styles. I think that it's a good mix of, you know, you can plan some stuff, and Michael is definitely a planner. Like between the two of us, he's the one who will like choose the restaurant or like suggest the activity, or, you know, that kind of thing.
That
like
surprises me, because you're always so on top of it with the planning.
I think that for him, it just brings him joy. Like I feel like it's his hobby.
He's like me.
It's his hobby to plan travel, as opposed to me, where I feel like it just makes me a little bit anxious, you know, having to plan the trip. So he takes the reins in planning the trip, and then I might suggest an activity, or I might suggest a day trip or something like that he might not have thought of. And then he might suggest, you know, a restaurant or an experience that I wouldn't have thought of. So I think that we really travel well together. And I think one thing that we do when we're on longer trips in particular is that we actually encourage having solo days. So even though we're on a trip together, we will have days where we're just by ourselves. So I think highly recommend this for all couples who travel. And we call it our solo day. And usually what we'll do is we'll spend the whole day and then we'll meet up for dinner. So So I will do everything from just shopping or going to a museum that I want to go to that maybe, he's not as interested, or he'll spend the day, in the vintage markets or in the flea markets looking and hunting for something really cool, or, trying a pub that he wants to check out. Like, I
Always
think
need a pub.
you always need a pub or a restaurant. And I feel like that is a really great way to like make everybody happy, because, you don't always have to do everything together.
Yeah, and then you're not on top of each other and getting frustrated as the trip goes on. Wait, that's amazing, because I didn't realize that that's how you two operate in a travel setting.
Yes, Michael is the one who plans everything.
I need to talk to Michael about this later, because that really surprises me, but I love it. We love a man who can plan, because that's, that's not always the case.
He's like planned people's honeymoons before. Like, every time people go on a trip, he's the first person that they ask.
Okay, we're definitely talking about this later. So, like, speaking of travel, though, something I love about you is that you travel a lot. And a lot of people say, I love to travel. But, when people say that, it doesn't always mean that they take the time and care to get to know the place and immerse themselves in the culture and the people. And when I think of you, I think you are someone who really embraces that aspect of travel. Yeah. I'd love to know, like, have you been anywhere where you were like, wow, this is somewhere that I can see myself seamlessly integrating into culturally, even though I didn't expect it? Or are there any places that just like immediately felt like home?
That's a great question. The first thing that came to mind was the Azores. So on our honeymoon, actually, we went to travel to the Azores. There's several islands, but we only went to one called San Miguel.
Okay.
And I think what was so special about that trip was, one, it was really unexpected. Like, I never thought about going there until, the opportunity came. And I had actually a travel partnership that ended up, that brought us there. And so I think that was an incredible, like, why would you say no, right? Like,
Totally.
I think that it was the coolest thing. And what I loved about it is that there are no like big chain hotels there. Like, it's very much a very contained, small vibe. I feel like it hasn't been littered with tourists yet.
So hard to find.
Yes, at least at the time. And like, there was a lot of it that felt very untouched. And I think that it was so beautiful because you have black sand beaches, the volcanic sand, and then you also have incredible landscapes and lakes and beautiful places to hike, and also a very rich cuisine and history of food there that I thought was really fascinating. So I think that San Miguel was like a place that I really loved. We went horseback riding. We were in the hot springs, like the natural hot springs that they have over there. And it was really like such a small town vibe that I felt like we almost went back in time to a time before TikTok and before travel influencers, you know? And I think that was such an incredible experience. Like, even the places where we stayed at a hotel that was like owned by the same family for 200 years,
Wow,
and I think that was really cool. They had a pool that was in a greenhouse that was surrounded by pineapples. It was a giant pineapple room, like, where they were just like growing pineapples, but there was also a pool inside there. So little details like that where I just felt like this is really magical and like so unexpected, because again, it is a travel destination, but it's not as popular as like some other places where, for your honeymoon, especially where people are like, go to the Amalfi Coast. Like, that's like the number one honeymoon destination. So I think that is a place where I felt like I was like really pleasantly like surprised. What was the other follow-up question to that?
Yeah, or a place that surprised you because it maybe was the opposite feeling to that, where it's like, ooh, like this, I thought I would like this, and it's a little different from what I anticipated.
It's so hard to answer because I feel like I always go into everything with an open mind, right? I try not to have these grand expectations of what is a place is going to be like. So I think that there was never a situation where I was either disappointed or turned off or surprised. I will say, actually, on my most recent Philippines trip, we went to the rural areas where my parents are from, and then Manila, the main, capital city. But then we also went to El Nido. And so El Nido is a very popular international travel destination. And as somebody who is Filipino, I guess I didn't really expect a place in the Philippines to be overcrowded with like foreign tourists. Like, same thing with Siargao, which is like a really popular surfing place in the city, in the Philippines. That is something that was like really eye-opening for me, because there were boat tours where, there would be like 200 people on the beach. And it kind of broke my heart a little bit because, again, I'm Filipino. My family's from the Philippines, and like seeing a lot of foreign tourists almost like disrespecting the gorgeous like natural landscape, and seeing the beautiful natural landscape of a place like El Nido, the islands, like just having it over commercialized. It was really heartbreaking, you know? And like, not to say that I didn't have a beautiful time there. And like, I went to an incredible resort and I saw like such incredible sights. And eventually once you get away from the crowds, but I feel like just witnessing over tourism was really sad to see. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's kind of how I feel about certain places now in Japan where my parents live. I actually think I was reading a post this morning about how the number of tourists from who are going to Japan has spiked incredibly the past year due to just, the popularity of the vibe or the aesthetic of Japan. And
Yeah.
and there's all these stories about places that are actually shutting down. Like there's a town in Japan that I'm blanking on the name of that just announced they're not doing their annual cherry blossom festival because
no.
people were just absolutely being disrespectful of the locals and trashing the place. And I think, yeah, as beautiful as it is to discover places and travel to them, I think you raise a really important point that you also still have to be so respectful. And I think, yeah, that's a really good reminder because it's easy to get caught up in the beauty of it all and to want to really milk every second and everything about it. But there is a balance to be struck for sure.
And one thing I wish more people, particularly Americans, I have to say, like one thing I wish more people who are traveling would consider is like to be respectful. Like I think that sometimes people have this attitude where they travel and it's like Disney World. Like they're kind of just gonna gawk and then like treat this place like like it's a temporary thing and
like a spectacle.
yeah, and not really immerse or like interact with locals or try the local food, or it's like people want the conveniences of their home in a different place. And that's just not the case.
No, exactly. So I was curious, in all these interesting places that you and Michael have been to, have you met anyone local who has opened your eyes to anything or shaped who you are, or a place that maybe has shaped who you are, that when you've come back home to New York, you've almost like taken a piece of that person's wisdom or perspective or something about that place back into your day-to-day life here?
So I went to Greece with my in-laws and with my husband in
that
September.
Looked beautiful. I remember this trip. It was gorgeous.
We went to an island, Naxos.
Yeah.
Again, it's not as popular as like Mykonos or Santorini, but it was an incredible experience. And just the hospitality of the Greek people was so heartwarming to me. And the simplicity of life was it was just a good reminder to, again, like remove yourself from like the hustle and bustle of New York City and like working in media and the kind of hamster wheel that you're on. Remove yourself from that, which is so necessary now and then. I feel like it's a reminder that the most important things are like family, community, and the little pleasures in life. So we had met a driver actually, and his name was Demetrios, and he was so incredibly kind. We worked with him for a couple of days to drive us around the island, to take us to some sites. And so I remember on the second day that he arrived, he brought a watermelon from his garden that he grew.
No way. That's so cute.
And it was just so incredibly nice.
Yeah.
Such a kind gesture. And he's like, my wife told me that I have to give you a watermelon. And then we would have that watermelon with our breakfast and just seeing that hospitality. And then our Airbnb host actually also, I believe his name was Michael as well. And like, he was just the kindest, most generous man, where he would show up with like fresh pastries baked by his wife in the morning. And he would come and stay for a chat. And he didn't have to drive us anywhere ever, but he would like volunteer to like drive us to the nice beach and gave us tips. And it was just like having that kind of experience when you travel is so special. And that's what makes me love travel, because it really is just about connecting, right? Connecting with people, connecting with cultures. And I think the best way to do that is by talking to locals and hearing their stories and everything.
Yeah, no, that's my favorite, one of the favorite parts of travel, at least for me. Yes, like getting to meet those locals and understanding how they behave, because the act of giving the watermelon to you is probably such a table stakes thing for them. But to your point, it's like, wow, you took that extra step to ensure that I get that same local hospitality. So I love that. That's so beautiful with the watermelon. Like, who would have thought? I wanted to do a quick rapid fire or lightning round. A place that shaped, well, I feel like it kind of answered this, but a place that shaped you the most, or your favorite city that you visited?
I'm going to be a basic girl and say Paris.
Oh my God, yeah.
I love Paris.
It's beautiful.
Yeah, and I will never get sick of it.
Yeah.
I love it so much.
It's not basic at all. I love that answer. A Filipino food you would make someone try immediately.
Ooh. Ooh, this is hard. I'm going to go with dessert. I think that
Ooh.
people should try halo halo, which is like a shaved ice
Love.
dessert, and it has some leche flan, which is like
Mm.
flan, and then it has ube ice cream, and
Oh.
it's just delicious.
Oh, I'm actually already hungry. A place you feel most like yourself and would move to tomorrow.
The first thing that came to mind was Sydney. I love Sydney. Immediately, even from the first time I ever visited there, it felt like home. So I don't know. Who knows what happens in the future?
Yeah, might have to go visit you and Michael in Sydney. A favorite beauty discovery while traveling? I feel like you kind of answered it with the brands
Ooh.
earlier, but anything else?
A favorite beauty discovery while traveling. Oh my goodness. Well, French pharmacies, again,
Oh,
they are
yes.
full of incredible things. And so there's this one, it's a hair and body oil. It's from a brand called Nuxe,
Ooh.
and it just has the most beautiful fragrance and has like a slight shimmer. I just love it for the summer, anytime actually, just because it has like
Yeah.
such a beautiful floral, like fresh smell. And it's a very much a French girl secret, you know?
And it's probably like, what, 10 euros at the pharmacy?
So cheap.
Yeah. This is what makes me so upset. Like, you go to these foreign pharmacies and it's like, what? Like, how much is it for this beautiful, well-made item that would
Yes.
probably cost like $50 here? One word that describes your relationship with New York.
Home?
Oh,
I guess
love that.
home is the one word that would describe it, you
I
know,
love
because it is
that.
home no matter what.
Yeah. Wait, I love that so much because another rapid fire question I was going to ask you is what would you or how would you describe home for you today after having lived such amazing experiences both here and abroad?
I think home is, this is going to sound so cheesy, but home is wherever my husband is.
Oh.
It's wherever Michael is. So the two of us love to travel. So, as long as we're together, we could create a home no matter where we are.
That's beautiful. Okay. I'm glad Michael married you. Best meal you've had while traveling?
This is a crazy question to ask me because how dare you?
I had to.
I think one of the best meals I've had. Oh my goodness. So I think one of the best meals that I've had was actually in Barcelona. And
Ooh.
I wish I could remember a specific place because it's not a restaurant. It's actually an experience. And so it's a local chef and he uses all local ingredients. And it's like a 10 plus course meal, and he cooks it there in front of you, and you also participate in putting it together. Basically, it's very interactive and it's very communal as well. When we were there, we were the only non-Spaniards actually in the room.
No way.
Everything was in Spanish. We had no idea what was going on, but thankfully somebody translated for us. But we were I just remember like the flavors were so creative, and the plating was so creative as well. It felt like a fine dining experience, but not fussy at all.
Wow.
Yeah.
And like the comfort of a more, it sounds like an intimate space.
Yes. Yeah. It was very
Wow.
few people.
Our favorite thing to do in the Philippines, favorite thing to do in New York, and favorite thing to do in Australia. I had to
Okay.
throw in all three.
All right. So my favorite thing to do in the Philippines, aside from eating, because Filipino food is genuinely the most delicious food on earth, I would say my favorite thing to do in the Philippines is go to the beach, of course.
Oh, yes.
Like it is an island, and it's actually 7,100 plus islands.
Which is always, I find that stat to be so amazing because that's so many islands.
So many islands, and all of them are stunning,
Yeah.
So I think that like going to the beach in the Philippines is unmatched. And again, because the water, the spirit, I think of the
Yeah.
hospitality of the people is just unmatched. I would say my favorite thing to do in New York is to see a live performance of some sort. So live music, a concert, a Broadway show. I am a theater person, so I just think that especially in this AI world, the more in-person experiences that cannot be replicated by AI, we need that, So I think
100%.
when I watch a Broadway show and I'm blown away by somebody singing or the staging or anything, I think to myself like AI can't do this, and it's very comforting. And my favorite thing to do in Australia is, specifically in Sydney, is to do the coastal walk. So from Coogee to Bondi coastal walk, I remember I stayed for a month in Tamarama, which is near Bondi. And every single morning I would wake up really early and I would just do that walk. And it's just the most incredible, like you can't believe it's in a city, It's like beautiful scenery, incredible beaches. Just like a nice way to be active. Like I feel like everyone in Sydney is very active.
Yeah. No, they're all like up early doing their workouts.
Everyone's up at 5:30 in the morning.
Like incredible. I'm always so jealous. Those are good. Those are really good answers. The second to last question then is what's next? What projects are you working on? Because I feel like you're always working on so many incredible things.
Wow. Well, I've been working on a book manuscript for a really long time.
Yes.
So hopefully this is the year that, a book becomes a reality, but we shall see. That has always been my dream. And other than that, I have my newsletter Pearl that I've been steadily building and growing and really wanting to focus on creating, a bigger community on Substack. And I think that's been a big focus. And then, of course, posting online, like posting my content and really experimenting with different formats. That has been something that I've focused a lot on because, 5 years in now, which is crazy to think, it's been 5 years since I quit my job. I'm forever going to be still learning.
I love that mentality. I read somewhere that that's what defines the most happy or healthy. I forget which of the two it was. But
Probably
you're
both.
constantly,
Probably both.
You're constantly trying to learn new things. It keeps you young. Yeah, I love that. Okay, so now the final question is, I think I know the answer, but between Australia and New York, who has a better coffee?
Australia, of course. Although, to be honest, I'm not a coffee girl. I really don't drink coffee. Yes, actually, I feel like I'll never sleep if I drink coffee. But from what I have tasted, I think the coffee is better in Australia, specifically in Melbourne, actually. They're known to be the coffee snobs, and it's for a good reason.
Yep. I have to agree with that. Yeah, I do. Oh, well, thank you so much, Kristina. And for everyone listening, if you enjoyed this and you think that somebody else might too, would love it if you follow Notes from Somewhere. And until next time, thanks again.
Thank you.